Welcome to Elevate English. Elevate your English. Elevate your life. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to the Elevate English channel. Let's start our story. The Lighthouse Keeper's Heart. The rugged coastline of Istmir stretched for miles, its cliffs battered by relentless waves and shrouded in mist. At its edge stood the Solhaven Lighthouse, a stoic sentinel that had guided ships safely to shore for over a century. Few dared to live in such isolation, but for Nora Eldridge, the lighthouse had become a sanctuary. Nora had been the keeper of Solhaven for nearly 5 years, taking over the role after her father's death. The solitude suited her, or so she told herself. She spent her days tending to the lighthouse, ensuring its beacon shone bright, and her nights immersed in books or painting the dramatic seascapes visible from her tower. But solitude, no matter how comforting, often brought an ache of loneliness. On stormy nights, as the wind howled and the waves crashed, Nora sometimes felt like the lighthouse itself, steadfast but yearning, a lone light searching for something unseen. One fateful autumn morning, a storm rolled in faster than anyone had predicted. Nora was in the lantern room, monitoring the light, when she spotted a small fishing boat struggling against the surging waves. Her heart raced as she grabbed her binoculars, watching as the boat was tossed mercilessly. Without hesitation, she raced down the winding staircase and out into the storm. The wind tore at her coat, and the rain stung her skin, but she pressed on to the shore, where the boat had capsized. Through the tempest, she saw a figure clinging to a piece of debris. With all her strength, Nora waded into the icy water, pulling the man to safety. He was unconscious, his face pale and his breathing shallow. She struggled to carry him back to the lighthouse, where she wrapped him in blankets and tended to his wounds. Hours passed before the man stirred. His eyes fluttered open, revealing a striking shade of green that reminded Nora of the sea after a storm. "Where am I?" he croaked. "Solhaven Lighthouse," and Nora replied, handing him a cup of warm tea. "You're lucky to be alive." The man's name was Lucas Hart, a marine biologist who had been conducting research along the coast. Grateful and intrigued by his rescuer, he insisted on staying for a few days to recover. Nora was hesitant at first. She wasn't used to sharing her space, but she couldn't turn him away. As the days passed, Lucas proved to be good company. He had a dry sense of humor and an insatiable curiosity about the world. He marveled at Nora's paintings and asked about her life at the lighthouse. In turn, he shared stories of his travels, his love for the ocean, and the work that had brought him to Istmir. Nora found herself drawn to Lucas in ways she hadn't expected. His presence filled the lighthouse with warmth, and she began to see her world through his eyes, the beauty of the cliffs, the wonder of the tides, the poetry in the crashing waves. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Lucas asked, "Oh, why do you stay here, all alone?" Nora hesitated, staring into the flames. "This place, it's my family's legacy. My father devoted his life to it, and I felt like I had to do the same." "But what about what you want?" Lucas pressed gently. Nora didn't have an answer. She had always thought of her solitude as a duty, a way to honor her father. But Lucas's question lingered in her mind, stirring something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, the desire for more. As Lucas's strength returned, he began to help with the lighthouse's upkeep. Together, they repaired equipment, painted walls, and even replaced the lantern's aging lens. Their partnership felt natural, and their friendship deepened into something neither dared to name. But Lucas's work awaited him, and when the weather cleared, he had to leave. The day he departed, Nora stood on the cliff, watching as his figure grew smaller along the winding path. She told herself it was for the best. People came and went, but the lighthouse remained. Weeks turned into months, and winter descended on Istmir. Nora threw herself into her routine, but the lighthouse felt emptier than ever. She often found herself thinking of Lucas, his laugh, his stories, the way he had made her feel seen. One stormy evening, as she sat by the fire, there was a knock at the door. Heart pounding, she opened it to find Lucas standing there, soaked to the bone but grinning like a man who had found his way home. "I couldn't stay away," he said simply. Nora pulled him inside, her emotions a storm of their own. "Why did you come back?" "Because," Lucas said, his voice steady, "I realized I wasn't searching for the ocean. I was searching for you." From that night on, Lucas became a part of Solhaven Lighthouse. Together, they navigated the challenges of the coast, building a life as wild and beautiful as the sea itself. Nora taught Lucas the ways of the lighthouse, and he shared his knowledge of the ocean, opening her eyes to the wonders that lay just beyond the waves. Their love grew in the quiet moments, the shared meals, the walks along the cliffs, the music of the storms that lulled them to sleep. And as the lighthouse's beacon guided ships to safety, their love became its own light, steadfast and eternal. Years later, when travelers passed through Istmir, they often spoke of the couple at Solhaven, whose bond was as unyielding as the tides. And though the lighthouse still stood as a symbol of resilience, it was the love within its walls that truly illuminated the coast. Lucas and Nora settled into a life together that was as rugged and breathtaking as the cliffs of Istmir. The lighthouse became not just a beacon for sailors, but a place filled with warmth, laughter, and shared dreams. Lucas, ever the explorer, turned his fascination with the ocean into a collaborative effort with Nora. He would spend mornings documenting tidal patterns, studying marine life, or diving along the coastline to observe underwater ecosystems. Nora joined him when she could, sketching the creatures he described and transforming their observations into detailed illustrations that complemented Lucas's research. Evenings were their time. They'd share stories by the fire, cook meals with ingredients Lucas foraged from the surrounding land, and listen to the relentless waves crashing below the cliffs. Lucas loved to recount myths about the sea, mermaids, lost cities, and treasures buried beneath the ocean floor, while Nora teased him for being a romantic. But their idyllic existence wasn't without challenges. The isolation that Nora had grown accustomed to was new for Lucas, who sometimes struggled with the solitude. Storms would batter the lighthouse for days, cutting them off from the village and the outside world. Supplies occasionally ran low, and the harsh winters tested their endurance. One particular winter, the storms came fiercer and more frequently than usual. The winds roared like beasts, and the sea foamed angrily against the cliffs. The lighthouse's beacon flickered dangerously one evening, and Lucas and Nora worked side by side to repair it, braving the freezing cold and howling winds. Afterward, exhausted and drenched, they sat in the lantern room, watching the light pierce through the storm. "This place asks a lot of us," Lucas said, his voice low. Nora reached for his hand, her fingers cold but steady. "It gives us a lot, too. You remind me of that." Lucas smiled, his green eyes soft. "And you remind me why I came back." The storm eventually passed, and with it came a renewed sense of purpose. Lucas proposed an idea, turning the lighthouse into a center for coastal conservation. "We can share what we've learned," he said, his excitement infectious. "Invite researchers, students, and artists. It doesn't have to just be the two of us." Nora hesitated. The lighthouse had always been her private sanctuary, and the thought of opening it to strangers unsettled her. But Lucas's vision was compelling, and she trusted him. Over the next year, They worked tirelessly to bring the idea to life. Lucas reached out to universities and conservation groups, while Nora designed living spaces and workshops within the lighthouse's sturdy stone walls. Word spread quickly, and soon, Solhaven became a haven not just for lost ships but for curious minds and creative spirits. The first group of visitors arrived in early spring, a marine biology graduate student eager to study Estmoy's tidal pools, a poet seeking inspiration from the sea, and a painter drawn to the rugged beauty of the cliffs. Each brought something unique to Solhaven, and their presence breathed new life into the lighthouse. Nora found herself thriving in the new dynamic. Though she had once feared the intrusion, she discovered a deep satisfaction in sharing her knowledge and seeing others inspired by the place she loved. Lucas, too, flourished, his passion for the ocean reflected in the enthusiasm of their guests. Among the visitors was a young boy named Finn, who had come with his mother, a marine ecologist. Finn was shy and kept to himself, but he was fascinated by the lighthouse and its history. Nora took him under her wing, showing him how the beacon worked and letting him help with small tasks. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Finn shyly handed Nora a drawing he had made of the lighthouse. "I want to live here when I grow up," he said softly. Nora knelt to meet his gaze, touched by his sincerity. "Then you'll have to promise to take good care of it." "I will," Finn said with a solemn nod. As the years passed, Solhaven became a beacon in more ways than one. It was a place where ideas blossomed, friendships formed, and love stories, like Nora and Lucas's, unfolded. Lucas and Nora grew older, their hair streaked with silver but their spirits undimmed. They often walked along the cliffs hand in hand, marveling at how their lives had intertwined like the tides and the shore. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Lucas turned to Nora. "Do you think we've done enough here?" Nora looked around the room, filled with artifacts of their shared life, sketches, books, instruments, and gifts from visitors who had passed through. "I think we've done more than enough," as she said with a smile. Their legacy lived on. Finn, true to his word, returned as an adult to become the next keeper of Solhaven. He carried forward the spirit of the lighthouse, preserving its role as a sanctuary for both ships and souls. And though Lucas and Nora eventually left the lighthouse behind, moving to a quieter cottage in the nearby village, their love for each other, and for Solhaven, remained as steadfast as the tides. To this day, travellers to Istmere speak of the lighthouse that holds more than just a light. It holds the echoes of two hearts, bound together by the sea, the storms, and the enduring beauty of love.